Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar between Cantilever and Conformic about end-to-end test automation with Robot Framework, how we can use Conformity Creator and Cantilever to do really cutting-edge test automation. I'm Henry, and this is Alexis with me. I'm here from Conformic.
Hey, hello, Henry. Thank you everybody for joining us. And let's start the webinar, Henry.
Yeah, let's do it. How are you doing, by the way?
Yeah, I'm great. We have some sun now in Paris, so you are live from Paris.
Yeah, I'm not in that much of an exciting location. I'm in a city called Vaasa in the middle of Finland, so really small place. So it isn't that big. So Paris sounds a lot better than Vaasa. Okay. We kind of jumped already into introductions a little bit. Hi, I'm Henry Terho. I'm working as a Chief R&D Evangelist, an interesting title. So I'm doing a lot of research and development work, doing a lot of work on partnerships and research partnerships as well. So what we are doing in the next 10 years, and maybe 90% of the projects that I start should fail if we are doing the cutting edge stuff. So getting the 10% out of there, and working at Cantilever, so doing the cloud testing side of this thing. And then we have Alexis.
So hi, my name is Alexis Desperoux. So I'm French. I'm client advisor for Europe for Conformic since now 8 years. And I've been in testing space since 15 years now. I've been a tester. I'm ESTQB certified test manager. So I know really well model-based testing. So I'm really specialist around this technology. And I will be here to present all the Conformic part.
Yeah, and we thought this would be a really nice way of touching base on something that two of our companies does. We do basically test execution and scripting of it, and Conformic does the test design. So I think we have quite a nice package here with the combination of our two products, and we were thinking that maybe we should run a joint webinar, and here we are. So the agenda for today is just first going through going through the generics. Why do we even need end-to-end testing, and what is end-to-end testing? Just quickly to catch up on the audience and getting everybody up to speed on the same level. Then we're going to talk about a little bit of Robot Framework and Cantilever. So Robot Framework is one of the open source frameworks to do testing that we've been developing quite a lot, and how to do the execution. And what the heck is this Cantilever that we're talking about? That's the cloud execution platform. And then we're going to talk about the integrated approach between Conformic and Cantilever, how Conformic can help you guys design and create those tests that can be then run, and kind of automate the whole pipeline from design into actual test runs and into actual reporting that you get out of there. So you don't have to do it manually at any step at the way. And then we're going to do a little bit of demo on how this joint approach works, and then go on the Q&A. Anything to add, Alex? You're muted, by the way.
Yeah, sorry. No, it's a perfect agenda. And if you have any question, really just we'll have some time at the end to answer all your questions. We are here for that. So feel free to answer all your questions that you have.
Yeah, and actually, I forgot a little bit about housekeeping. This is the Cantilever YouTube channel. You can click on the bell to get all the notifications, all the new streams and webinars from there. You can use the chat to ask the questions. So we can comment on any of the questions that you put on the chat. We can see the chat, so we can interact through there. And if you have any kind of things that, for example, I'm muted or somebody's muted and we don't seem to notice, you can write it up on the chat and talk to us through there. Or if you have some clarifying questions or some view isn't zoomed in enough, you can also ask on the chat. So let's keep that as an interactive part in there. Okay. Thank you. Why companies need end-to-end testing? And I think this is a question that both Conformic and Cantilever we've been thinking about a lot, as we at Cantilever at least have been focusing mostly on doing end-to-end testing. We can do unit testing and all these others, but mostly we've been discussing about end-to-end. And I think this is a trend now that, if any of you know the testing pyramid, that end-to-end testing is on top of it. It covers the path of the actual user through the application and doesn't test one part, small part of it somewhere. So the coverage of the test is really well, and it's really the path that the user actually does. And this kind of a testing in the current ecosystem, where actually the complexity and amount of software being developed is constantly expanding. Because of all the new tools that we have, basically we are also feeding that problem with our nice tools that can generate a lot of tests, is that the complexity and amount of software is constantly growing. It's easier to do complex software. You use a lot of APIs. For example, you use a lot of, in web applications, you use a lot of code from, for example, Node modules or NPM. So most of the actual code that you write for your application isn't written by you guys. It's actually like the amount of homegrown code in live production software is actually getting smaller and smaller. It's mostly about this, what the academics call opportunistic reuse, that everybody is kind of taking different packages from online and using those to kind of help them create new features. So the actual homegrown code is mostly glue between packages. And this, of course, begs the question, whose responsibility it is to test all these packages, and what's the kind of testing dilemma in there. And that's why I also think end-to-end testing will be the thing in the future. So everybody has kind of tested their own packages. So the main core of the testing payload or the testing load that you have to do is going to be the end-to-end space, to really make sure that this whole package that you're doing with integration testing and end-to-end is going to be the most difficult thing to do. Any comments from Alexis on this?
No, I think it's all about winning some time, be more efficient, and it's all about that. I think end-to-end testing is really how to speed up the process, how to be more efficient in general.
Yeah, and how to deliver value faster in kind of.
Yes.
And I think it's the same idea also behind why you are starting to use all of these open source repositories and all of this, that you want to deliver value faster, so you grab something that's already done or being generated for you. And looking at these kind of points, we are covering the fact that the amount of software is growing very fast. Homegrown code is lessening and lessening, and also you're using a lot of data from outside of your application. So, for example, you don't always, even though your application would be working perfectly, you have to test external APIs, for example, which you really cannot do with unit test type of an approach. You have to use kind of end-to-end testing, which actually uses live environments and fetches the data. So there's a lot happening in the ecosystem that's kind of driving us towards that goal. Then to talk about the other end, just taking a little bit on the actual test execution side, and then going to the design direction from here. Just want to give out a couple of terms about this robot framework that we're talking about. The robot framework is an open source framework for running end-to-end tests. It was released as open source in 2008 and developed for Nokia mobile phones back in the heyday when they were doing really well and doing a lot of mobile phones. As we said, nowadays they're more on the networking side. Still a lot of complex problems in there, and they're still a member of the Robot Framework Foundation and active participants in there, so they're still using that technology quite a lot. And actually, the usage of Robot Framework is growing in many ways because of the fact that it's quite easy to use. The syntax it uses, we're going to show you a little bit of that also in the demo. And Conformity can also generate that kind of format now with our integration, and generate this kind of very readable testing data that not only testers can argue about, but all managers and everybody can kind of reason about it and really see what's actually going on in there. Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about, that we're providing kind of a keyword-based solution proven to actually reduce maintenance costs up to 80%. And this is not, as I might say, not bullshit. This is actually proven by some of the cases that we've done for some of our clients, that they've really managed to really slice out maintenance from there because of the fact that it's keyword-based. Looking at the example on the right side, it might be a little small now, so you can kind of read it. But if you've had experience with, for example, Gherkin format, which kind of always is kind of like a prose format, which is a test should do, or the application should do something. This is kind of an imperative form of it, where we say that we want to click on a certain button, for example, or then click on a certain element or verify a certain text in there on what's going on in the application, and very simple keywords or very simple actions in the same way that humans could do. This could basically be a manual testing script, and that's what we've been going towards with this robot framework and all the stuff that we're doing in there, is to kind of blur the line if the executor of the tests is actually human or a machine. We want the same test cases to be machine readable and human readable at the same time from the automation, so that the communication in there can really reduce maintenance costs quite expansively in there. And I think that's one of the key bonus points of robot framework. It's easy to reason about, it's easy to maintain, and in big cases, it's actually also quite powerful and expressive in there. And the second part that we can, at Cantilever are kind of committing to, or what we are developing, is Cantilever Pace and combined to robot framework. Cantilever Pace is kind of like AVS for robot framework. What we are providing is a cloud environment where you can run your tests and you can provision environments from there directly without the need of actually having all of those running in your closet on your own service space. Or for example, in the case of mobile devices, you don't have to own all the different mobile devices. You can actually provision actual hardware devices from our cloud and run your testing in there. And the same idea that we talked about, the easy to understand keywords, the idea is that you can run the same test script on different platforms without changing it. If your application is multi-platform application, for example, that you can run the same test script on Android, you can run it on iPhone, you can run it on the desktop, and you can run it on the browser if you have the same flow, of course, in those applications. If they are different kind of an application, then of course it is not general AI yet, but we are slowly getting there towards that direction that we could also do something like that. So the idea being that we want to supercharge your testing and make you not handle the environment configs and all of that, which typically also takes a lot of maintenance and a lot of effort. And we want to make it really powerful and really create the next generation of testing tools in here. But one thing that we haven't done that much is the test design and development and model-based testing. And that's why we are partnering a lot with Conformity also on that front and really want to get that partnership going on in there, and how you can get those created tests from your model-based testing directly to run. So that's why you even don't have to manually run them anywhere. You can directly pump them to the cloud. The whole model arranges all of the environments for you, and you get all of that stuff running straight away. And talking about conformic and pace integrated approach is something that I think Alexis can take at this point. I covered some of the Cantilever stuff quite well here, and let's give a little time for Alexis also to speak, so I don't speak too much.
Thank you very much, Henry. So about now Conformity Creator. So I will start from scratch. Really, when you start with a project, usually you start with directly with your requirements. So the idea and the concept behind a model-based testing approach is you start from your requirements because it's where you have the knowledge. So you build based on your requirement a model. And when you have a model, so you will have a description, a graphical description of your requirements. The beauty with that is first you will try to find directly in a model, you will find some kind of hole in the racket. This means that if you don't really understand how the requirements, all the flow of your requirements, you cannot model it. So will already, when you will start building the model, you will already have some discussion around your requirement. This is already a first value around the model approach. When your model is done, then you will generate some test cases because, of course, based on your model, based on your requirements, we will generate the test cases. So the test case creation will really be based on your model. So because we will try to generate all the, let's say, all the coverage, all this approach, we'll also try in parallel to try to optimize all the test suite, because the idea is also to have not 1,000 and 1,000 of test cases that you cannot execute, but it's also to have the best test cases, the best test script possible. So for that, you will the tool will generate and optimize all the generation for you, but we will also have some statistics around, for example, the coverage about the model, the coverage about your requirement. This means that we can also not only generate 100% coverage of your requirement of your model, but we can also select some part of the model depending on the maturity of your project. And this is where the model-based testing approach in general is really, really powerful. Also, the version of your test cases. This means that if you have any change of your requirements, now that you have a model, you can just build on the model, generate some new test sets, new test cases, and new test suites by just clicking on a button. And when it's done, we will push it to Cantilever, and here it's the part of Cantilever.
Yeah, and as said, we can get those tests directly as we support version control systems as well. You can get that versions running. We have logs that kind of track which different test sets have been run based on what Git version or Git tag. You can even add tags if you want to. If you have, for example, parallel versions with a little bit of a different config, or you're running, for example, A/B testing, you can do that as well. And the idea that we get all of this test set directly into the cloud execution platform really helps in you getting them running immediately when you've created them from the model and optimize them on that side. And then you can dump all of that execution directly into the cloud. You then get that scalable test execution. You can kind of run it if you have a huge amount of tests, as some of these test sets might have, that you typically take 24 hours or quite a long time to run those tests. And then one case might be that if they are really well parallelizing tests that they don't depend on each other, you might, for example, dump them on 100 environments and get those results quite fast. And on kind of execution side, we also do, if you have a history of test execution in Cantilever, we can also at first run those tests first, which are most likely to fail or which have a history of failing. And we can kind of get you that feedback of what's actually happening as fast as we can. And for example, getting you then back into the development as fast as you can without waiting for that 24 hours, maybe even 1 minute or 2 minutes. If the first test, for example, fails, then you immediately know that something's up. The second thing is, as we said, results history. You can dig through all of that and you can see what the changes have been, and looking at the dashboards and kind of analyzing what's going on in there. What we are actually building also on top of that is a lot of test case analytics. We've actually turned all of your unit tests and all of your end-to-end tests into performance tests now. So you can actually see if some performance at some part of your application is falling or getting worse, and we can kind of highlight that in our beta features. We had a stream about that last month. And then you can use that data, or that kind of quality intelligence, as we say, on combining all of that test data and all of that to really think about what features you want to put into the next sprint, into the next requirements. And off we go again to the conformic side to kind of start creating the next iteration of the model and next iteration of the product that we are testing here. And I think that really well shows us how the partnership is going between the two companies that we have here, that we're doing the execution and Conformix doing the planning and what actually should be run in there.
Yeah, and I just want to say something a bit more here. As soon as the execution is done, as soon as you have your trace, probably you will have some change again in your requirement, because your product is always evolving. And when it's done, then we come back from the beginning, change on the requirement, you just update, you build on the model again, you regenerate the test cases, it optimizes automatically, we push it again to to Cantilever, and then you loop again.
Yep. And that's the kind of iterative software process. Even when typically you're thinking about model-based testing, you think it might be associated with waterfall and other kind of older styles of delivering software, where you first make the models, you first make all the requirements, and you do it like that. That isn't actually the case. It can be run in much shorter increments with Agile or even DevOps kind of way of thinking without problems. You just have to update the model at the same time as you are updating the requirements and you are updating the software. So it's not too much about the methodology there. Looking at the kind of, just giving you guys a little bit of a bird's eye view into how this architecture between Conformic and Cantilever is working. We are running our service on top of ABS. So it's hyper available from anywhere in the planet. We have a lot of different availability zones as well. For example, if you want your data to go into EU, for example, you can set it up in such a way that if you want to be under GDPR, you can only run the stuff on the EU side, or if you're in the US, you can run all the stuff only in the US. So we can kind of manage that as well as we can in there, so you don't have to be scared of that. In Cantilever, we have the test design with PaceWorks, which is the format that we've been talking about. When we are talking about test design here, we are more talking about the editors and the syntax, and with Conformic, we're more talking about the whole design of the test sets and what's actually in the test. So there's a little bit of a different take on the word design in there. Now, another important thing is the cloud-based test execution infrastructure that we have. So all of that execution is happening in the cloud, and we can deploy your applications in there. with robot frameworks pre-wording that you can basically install any package of the environment that you want. But and then all of that data is saved into a data warehouse for analytics, so you can dig through all the old, for example, test runs that you need, and all of that is also stored on the cloud and be accessible for you. And even though you might think that cloud is actually unsecure and all of that, but what I've actually found out is that cloud, by its nature, is starting to be more and more secure than on-site environments, because in the cloud you have to protect everything. You have to think of these things. You have to think where people might get in. If you're just installing the environment on your local machine, you're maybe trusting that, well, nobody has access to this computer anyway, so I can just put password 123 on this testing environment and it doesn't matter. But it might actually, in the case of a breach, it might matter. So with the cloud, we can give direct access control on who can access all of that stuff, who can access all the projects, even outside of your company. For example, if you have consultants or somebody else, we can even, for example, hide certain keywords like passwords and all of that stuff, encrypt them in our vault, basically, that you have them in there, and your consultants can use those passwords without them knowing the actual password. So they just use the actual object without knowing the contents of it, and our environment will handle the security in there. Then we connect securely into your local environment, where you can run Conformic on top of any kind of different integration. You can design tests for SAP, Salesforce, Oracle, and all of these different environments that typically need or are super complex and need that kind of a level in there. And I think Alexis can share a little bit more about that.
Yes, around integration. So of course we can integrate with SAP, Salesforce, and Oracle. We can also import some assets that you can have directly, so like that you don't start a model from scratch. Also around the export, so you can also create a model for desktop, web, mobile, or also mixed application. So depending on really what you want to test, Conformic tool will completely adapt to it. So also another point is the integration with your continuous integration pipeline. So you can be completely integrated with your local, let's say, SVN environment, SVN Git, and all of that. So this is really how Conformic works. Conformic is based on Eclipse. It runs on your local application, and yeah. If you have any question again specific on that, you can just send some comment. It's always quite a bit difficult to cover everything in one slide, but I think you will see a lot of things during the demonstration. And I think, Henry, that the demonstration is around Salesforce, right?
Yeah, it's our Salesforce. We're going to run a little bit of a demo about using Salesforce Cloud and generating a couple of tests in there and seeing how that works. So that's something that we can quite easily automate and demo it. And also one thing is that we can also integrate into the build pipeline as well with Pace. I just forgot to say about that, in the same way that you have the triggers and you have JIT and you have all the version control access in there. And that's actually one of the ways that we integrate with Conformic as well. So you can get that kind of stuff going on in there, and the whole pipeline works. And you get all the scheduling and all of that handled as well. If you're running Jenkins, for example, we can easily integrate into that. Of course, we provide our own scheduler on the cloud, and we're actually providing our own agents. If you want to run stuff on your local machine, for example, you can link through that on secure connections as well, so no problems on leaks there. And for example, we know corporate infrastructure is really secure and something that you don't want to mess with too much. We know that, and we created our agents in such a way that you can easily do that without conflict with your IT department as well. So we've been thinking about that. I seem to have lost the PowerPoint. Just a second. Here we go. And then talking a little bit about all of the kind of capabilities that we have in here. Alexis, do you want to go first? I've typically been going first.
Sure.
You, the floor. You are also on the left slides.
So about the Conformity Creator capability, so I was saying Conformity Creator create a model, and the idea and the beauty of creating a model is you will save time and effort. Of course, when you will first create your model, it will take the same amount of time that if you do it manually, but as soon as you have some requirement change, here you reuse your model. So you don't need to rebuild from scratch, you build on top of that. So of course you will win. crazy amount of time. I mean, I've been using model-based testing in a previous life, and it really changed my life of tester. That was really great. I mean, building on something because before I was, every time when I was creating some test cases, everything was created manually, and if I have a requirement change, I had to take again and go through all my test cases manually again. It took me a lot of time. With model-based testing, it's just an improvement of the model. I just push a button and I regenerate again the test cases, the test script, everything. It's really, really, really fast. Requirement traceability. So as I was saying, your model is based on requirements, but you can also link your requirement directly inside your model and push it to Cantilever. So this is something that it's quite and really interesting also. So like that, we always keep traceability of your requirements. Visibility, test coverage, test optimization. I was talking about that before. This is done automatically, so you don't need to think really about that. And if the tool cannot give you 100% test coverage, you will have also some data about why. And maybe the issue comes from your model, but maybe also the issue can come from your requirements. Maybe that the tester don't really understand the requirements, and probably you will find also an issue because of that. So all of the statistics are directly embedded, and it will help you to always improve your test coverage, improve your model, improve your requirements. And this is really something that I really like with graphical modeling, is you can handle some really, really complex data, some really complex requirements, and everything completely graphically. Also, test intelligence optimization. So like I was saying also before, you don't want to have thousands and thousands of test cases. You want to have the best test cases. So like that, you can spend, of course, some time on improving your requirements, improving maybe your model, or just, spending some time with developers and talk with them about, hey, how can we improve this and this? And all of that now, because of the test optimization, you win a lot of time around test execution, and you win also some time around let's say the improvement itself about the test cases. You will not spend time by doing some duplication of test cases. Everything is managed automatically, and when we will generate the test suite, you will have the best test suite that it's possible to generate from a model. Seamless integration with requirement and test execution environments. So as I was saying, we connect to your requirement management platform, and we connect directly to Cantilever. So you don't need to worry about all of that. I mean, you just focus on your model, you focus on your job, thinking in a different way, how you can, let's say, model your system. You spend some time by thinking about that, and we do the rest of the job. I mean, the test case execution, the test case generation, and the test case execution, all of that is completely free for you.
Yeah, Alexis had really good points on that side, and I think something that's really hits my ears is the kind of test case optimization, that you can really reduce the amount of test cases that you need with model-based testing. Because typically when you're generating them yourself, you're pretty much guessing how many tests, for example, you need to edge out some corner cases or cover up, for example, something like, what could be a good example? Valid email cases. That what kind of test should I even run that so I know that this validator accepts only valid emails? You typically try it with, for example, your own email, and then something that, for example, the Google address that isn't a valid email, and call done. But that really doesn't give you a proper coverage. But with the kind of creation features that you can get the right tests done there, and the right amount of tests done, not too much to really cover it. So then on the other side, when we have that nice reduced test set, you can take it to Cantilever with the format that's proper framework. We can set up all those test environments. If your application is running in the cloud, we don't even need to set up any environments. You can just point us at the URL where the application is, and it will work directly from there. And we can scale it up as much as needed. No matter how big of an application it is or how many devices you want to test, we can handle that. Or if we cannot handle it, we'll quickly buy up new server hardware to really scale up. But that shouldn't be a problem. If you're testing something that AVS runs out of resources, then I don't know what you're doing. And I'd be super interested to actually know what you're doing. Of course, cross-platform version control, we talked about those, test run histories, pipeline integration, analytics. all of the juicy parts is on this list. This is pretty much a feature list that we can talk about. And looking at something that I think we can do with then on this page is that we use these tools called Conformity and Cantilever to really generate tests on robot framework, which creates you a nice little set of really robust tests that you can do it, which actually results in faster testing cycles, complete coverage, and better quality software. And I think that's what we all want. The whole end goal of testing anyway is to give you confidence about the code that you're deploying. You want to be confident, for example, in some mission critical software that it really works. And if you're not doing mission critical works, you're kind of running on this Facebook move fast and break things. You still want to have some kind of a baseline. As for example, even Facebook now has changed their motto. They're not move fast and break things anywhere. Now they're talking about move fast with scalable infrastructure, which is kind of their new slogan. So this is what we also aspire to do: give you the opportunities to move really fast with scalable infrastructure. Okay, so actually, I'm just going to go back one slide here. Any voice from Alexis on this slide? I kind of skipped you in there a little bit.
No, I think we are just with this approach, we're just trying to address something that it's really important. As we live now in a world that things needs to go faster, where we need to test faster, and where we handle complexity always. Let's say every day. So really the idea is to speed up the process, to also simplify the way of doing all this kind of approach and test. So it's why we are really let's say adding our two forces to try to really target all of that. Faster testing cycle, of course, this is when you know in mobile that you need to do some release, let's say not every week, but every 2 weeks sometime, when you need to have some complete coverage, when you need to have better software quality. I mean, to handle all this kind of complexity, it's something that when you do it manually, it's something that it's really hard to do. So it's why we join our force together to try to offer you a solution to do that.
Yeah. And next up, we can have a demo on just showing up what we built on Conformix side to really help you guys deploy those tests in there and then run them in the cloud and testing some Salesforce application, which is typically notoriously difficult to test because of their online formatting. But let's see how it goes. If you have any questions, you can ask them now. We'll take them from the chat in the QA or answer them even now. I'm gonna need a couple of seconds to set up the demo. Can you guys still hear me when I'm talking to this way as I'm looking at the other screen?
Yeah, yes, we can, Henry.
Yeah, very good. We can now go into the demo. Let's go on the second screen. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what we actually have on Conformix side. We actually created a library of all the different kind of keywords that we use. Oh, Zoom is little bit of a that. We have a lot of all the different keywords that we are using. What we want to do is reduce the amount of usable keywords into a really small subset of actions that humans do. For example, clicking on a button, clicking on a text, verifying a text, clicking on an image, verifying an image, to really scale down that set of possible actions into something that is as expressive as possible, with really limiting the amount of keywords in there and kind of helping people understand what the software is actually doing. And that's what we've basically done with this integration, that we've fed all the different keywords and different actions that you can do, which also fits quite well with the model-based testing. That what you want to do is to do actions in there and link these into these kind of Cantilever actions. And I've actually already run it for a couple of cases that we did. We have a small model here. This is pretty much showing you, I've already generated steps in there, which basically showing you that we want to create an account and use the account for doing an actually opportunity from that account and creating a contact from the account. So basically, our opportunity is a sales opportunity that you can list up in the Salesforce. And this is all thing. I don't know if it's visible. Let me see if I can zoom it in a little bit. So this is actually created already, all the different steps in here that we are going to run in there. But this is the kind of a simplified model that we've been using for creating the account, using it in 2 different ways, and then after that, deleting the account. And then from these steps, we've actually created all the different test steps that we want to run and all the different tests that we have, they're actually in here in test.robot file. I don't know if I can zoom this. This basically creates the test that we have. I'm going to show these in a little while in a little bit of format as I cannot zoom this, so I can show them actually on the web page, because you cannot zoom windows, but you can actually zoom the browser. So I'm going to show them a little bit better in there. This creates.
Just want to jump here, Henry. Can you just show again the model itself? Just want to just explain quickly something about that. The ADS, all the little steps that you have inside the model is based directly on the base keyword. It's all the let's say the previous diagram that you saw, and the way to build this diagram, it's something that it's really simple. You have a menu on the right. You just drag and drop the stuff directly on your Canva, and then what you will do is you will drag and drop let's say the keywords directly inside the activity diagram, and you will build your model like that. Then you have, of course, a couple of artifacts that will not, of course, explain in this demonstration because we will need much more time to do it. But this is really how you build the model. It's really so by just drag and dropping some actions that you have in your structure diagram, and then you will have this kind of list of all the, let's say, basic action that you can do. You will have and describe what you want to do directly. So it's really just some drag and drop. It's really easy to do. And I will say that any of you here, if we zoom in, create an account, you can really understand what we are doing in this diagram. So you see it's really fast and it's really easy to do it.
Yeah.
So can you just zoom a bit, because we have a question, we have a comment that is asking us to zoom. So we have an issue to zoom with when it's about text inside Conformic, inside Eclipse, but here in the model Canva, we are zooming a bit more.
Yeah, and I'll show you the actual test cases soon in the online text editor, because you can zoom Firefox a bit better. But just to show you that these tests are actually coming from here, we generated them from this, which generates all the tests needed to cover that flow. So we have actually two tests from here which cover that simple model that we have. And both of these basically have the creation and deletion of the actual app in there. And this has been generated. I'm going to now show them on the browser as it's a bit easier. Of course, I have a wrong window open here. These are the same tests now which have been imported into Cantilever through Jet. So this is the same file that you saw just previously, but now we can zoom it a little bit more. So you can see that the same file has been generated in here, created by PageForScriptor. We currently don't have the requirements tags in here, which is a documentation tag, but we can generate those because it was just such a simple model. We didn't put any of the documentation tags in it there, but we could actually generate. I'm going to show another test case just quickly, that we could generate the documentation tags also in there, which show you what, for example, requirement the test case links to. And we can generate those on Conformic side and then just import into page side. And then you always have that documentation traceability there directly into the actual test cases as well. But looking at this, we generated a couple of tests, which we can then run online. Somebody's trying to call me. My phone is somewhere and buzzing away. And all of this test case runs in here. So you can see that we're actually opening up the application in the right state, logging in. We are running here we are running actually the that we were having in the model. Let me show you that a little bit. Creating an opportunity from an account, and then we're getting a contact. First, we are doing we're first doing a contact in this one, creating a new contact into our sales setting. So the typical process in Salesforce, for example, is adding new contacts that you want people to contact in, and then those typically progress into new actual opportunities that you can also add in here. And these two test cases are running those kind of cases directly against the Salesforce application. We are going to run the demo application in here. And you can see we have all the login information, for example, already in the state. And these are using, as we said, I don't know if you can see it, variables. So nobody who's actually written these tests, and not even conformic application, does not need to know the actual username and password that's being used to log into Salesforce. Those are already also handled on this side with the parameters that we can fed directly from the parameter vault on page side. Am I losing internet now?
No, we can still hear you. I just want also to say that all the data that you saw in test.robot, yeah.
Hello.
So I can hear you, Henry.
Now I'm back. Yeah.
Yeah. So all the data that you can see directly inside test.robot is directly handled and generated by Conformic.
Yep.
And maybe you can just quickly explain about keyword.robot, how it's done.
Yeah. So this is also coming from partly coming from the Conformic side as well. So parts of it have been, of course, auto-generated, and part of it have been configured by somebody who's actually familiar with the app that is being tested. For example, we have all the home URL and login URLs in here in place, and these actually point you to certain places in the application, so certain app states. So if you think about Modelbased, you're talking a lot about transitioning from state to state. With the internet, this is, of course, quite easy because you can just navigate from a URL to a URL. But for example, with some other cases, like if you're testing an application, it might involve some traveling between different kind of windows and clicking on different places in there to do that traveling. That can be handled in the kind of app state config, and that can also be auto-generated in there. But in the case of web pages, it pretty much goes into the typical navigate to a different URL or open up a menu, and that's been generated from there. And it kind of helps you also with those transitions that it set up the application in the right state. For example, all the teardowns and all of those are also supported in here and automatically generated, so we know the application is in a proper state in there. And this then comes into the same test.robot. All of these are quite simple test cases that you can really see from, even though there isn't too many comments on this, as this is just a quickly generated test case, you can quite easily reason about what's actually going on in this. And I think this is a huge part of it, that we can take model-based testing approaches, typically sometimes create tests that are quite difficult to read on what's actually going on in them, as they are machine generated. But because of the keyword syntax that we have, we can quite easily see what's happening. We can see that we are actually going into the home state. We are clicking on the element app launcher. We're clicking on marketing, going to accounts, adding a new account with new account information, account name Salesforce, adding up phone numbers, adding up different kinds of information, saving it, navigating to that account, and then manipulating it again and verifying that, yes, the information is actually in there, and clicking on certain items to kind of navigate between what are we adding in there. So you can kind of see it. And there's also the tear down in the end. So we're actually deleting that account based on the flow. So it's been combining information from the different nodes and creating all those test cases for you.
I want to add something around the pace keyword. Is I really want here to point something that I mean, here when you read the test cases, all the pace keyword are really simple to understand. And I think it's also something that it's quite I think great with this with pace is I mean, you can have someone that is just joining your company for the first, and he needs to read all of that. I mean, he can understand really. Yep. It's really straightforward, and it's something that it's I think really great in this language.
Yeah, and I think Alexis nailed it on the head there. That's kind of the main key points that we want to do is really improve the communicability of testing, as we've noticed that superbly increases their maintenance, increases how easy it is to discuss, and how easy it is to figure out what the tests are actually done. I think everybody who's been in the testing field knows that you've encountered a lot of legacy tests. You look at them, you have no idea what they do, and you have no idea if you are brave enough to delete them from your test set, even though they've been failing for the last 2 months and sometimes succeeding. I've seen that situation in many companies, that people do not dare to, for example, delete old tests because they do not understand them. And that's why we put a lot of effort into the understandability. And this is just another demo from a test suite that kind of shows what can be done this is if you can register for free at pace.cantilever.com and check it out also. So this is the first test or like example repository that you can really annotate these cases. But really, for example, testing for a web shop, it really reduces to really simple cases that you're actually doing. You're going into certain shop page, verifying that you are on the actual right page, running some of these navigation items and shopping for products. The test cases are quite simple and quite short on doing that kind of a testing, and also then going through all the cases. But what I still want to show you guys is of course, the test execution. And that's one of the main things. We now covered kind of how to create tests, what the models are in Conformix side, how easy it is to actually generate those tests, import them into Cantilever directly from Jet, and it auto pulls them from there. It makes it really simple. I didn't really have to do anything except configure the right repository in there. We can then go and actually run the tests. These are being run in the cloud. I can actually stream the test results from here on what's actually going on there. It'll now kick in the actual test execution on the cloud, and you can actually see what's going on those test cases. Of course, you don't have to stream them if you don't want to. And typically, when you're running CI/CD pipelines, you don't stream them. This is like a very nice way of course, demoing, but also if you have any problems with those test cases, you can quite easily debug on what's going on in the test cases. And seeing live on what's going on in there. And we, of course, even have a live editor where you can go step by step with these test cases against the web page, so you can see what's actually going on. And I think we're going to see something here that's going to happen. We're actually tearing down the test already. There's actually interesting demo effect happening yesterday as Salesforce updated some of their pages that they are running. Yep. What's happening here is Salesforce updated a couple of web pages. So we know that now the model that we did previously, or let's wait for the results. But there was also already an error in there, so I know what's going on in here. And this is also a nice way of showing that the actual test runs can find bugs and can find modifications in there, and it's actually a nice discussion on the fact that how when your application changes, you also want to update your model, what you're doing in here, and what actually happens in there. But you can kind of see that the execution is happening.
Yeah, but the demonstration is really based on the real Salesforce website. So of course, we cannot, let's say, we cannot build the model before. So of course, if you work at Salesforce, you will have done the demo, the model before, generate the tests. When let's say your new release is ready, when your test case is ready, you run it through Pace, and then you can before pushing live, you can do the test. Here we do the test after the release. So of course, there is some little difference between the model and the real application.
Yeah, and this is what happens, that the web page doesn't load with the current way that they've done it. That changed in there, so we have to change the model a bit. As we can see that we've tried to enter some tests in there, we couldn't find the verify text that we are looking for accounts page, but the accounts page isn't where it's supposed to be anymore. So you can get this kind of a result, hell, there's an empty screenshot here, so something's going on that shouldn't be going on. So now we know that we should change this test case, and this is actually a nice opportunity to demo that you can kind of see the screenshots of what's going on the testing. Then you can react to them quite easily when you get the kind of negative feedback from the actual tests running in here. So actually, even though the test failed and the cases that we wrote failed, we actually now can easily demo that you can then notice quite easily that, hey, there's a bug in here, something's changed. We either have to update our tests, or we either have to fix the bug. And in this case, I think we're talking about updating the model as Salesforce has updated their pages a little bit. And well, might be that we even found a bug from Salesforce if this is the way that they don't want it to be actually run. Yeah. But basically, you get good reports on what's actually going on in there, and you can then go ahead and debug these through the actual screenshots and everything. And you can even get videos from all of the cases. I think we saved that video from that run that you can then actually, I know I didn't save it, but you could easily check out that video and see what's actually going on with that model, and then updating it. And as the cycle goes, updating it in there.
Okay, and Henry, we need to speed up a bit because we have we have just 1 hour. What I suggest is maybe just to show really quickly again all the little phases around end-to-end. So maybe the modeling creator, maybe quickly see also the traceability matrix inside creator. Then we come back into base and then the execution. So like that, the audience really understand the process of how we work together. So this is the model, of course. So you create your model, you add your let's say all your keywords, you summarize everything, all your requirements. You can link your requirement inside the model. Then when your model is done, then you go in the test design part. So maybe you can just click on test design on the top. Yeah, here. So in test design, you just need to, here we are, extend. So you will see the coverage of let's say the actions, the requirement, everything will be here. So you need to regenerate all the test cases and all of that to have all the data. So when it's done, when it's here, you will understand if you don't have 100% coverage and all of that. When it's done, you click on export test cases, then we will export it directly into Cantilever. And then we go back into Cantilever.
Yep. Then we end up with the tests actually being available in the editor, in a test suite. I'm just showing them through the online editor that you can see. We get the resources file, which actually comes from here. You can see it being here, which is the resources that have been put into the use in here. And going back into here, it's here. And then we have the generated tests, which have been generated also by Conformic. We can then set them to be run, for example, manually, that I did, or we can schedule them to be run daily, or we can even trigger them through API triggers from Jenkins or your build pipeline to run whenever you want to, or even when the actual repo updates and when you get new models, we can immediately run those tests. Then you get the test results here, which you can then go through from each detailed execution, or you can even get email notifications and all of that from there.
And usually, so the next step is you have some discussion around what was the issue. The good point is you don't need to talk about now all the issue that you can have with the code. You probably have just an issue with, let's say, your requirements. So then you will discuss your requirement, improve the model, and you go through this cycle again.
Yeah. Then you go back into Conformic, then you model that
you loop again.
Then you go again. Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah, let me change into, we're running a little bit out of time here. Can we switch back to the slide set? And if there's any questions or anything in there, we're gonna talk about them. I'll also, we have some time for QA. If anybody has any questions in there that they want to talk about, or ask about the stream that we had, or any of that. I think we're gonna, in the future, if there's interest, we're gonna do a little bit of a workshop on how this whole thing works together. So I think that would be a really good thing to do, and demoing how it does. Do we have any Q&A?
And also, what do you think about the integration? Do you have any question around pace, around creator? We are here for that, so feel free to chat. You can write directly in YouTube, right, Henry? If I have a chat, so you can write directly on YouTube. You can, and we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, and also if you're interested in the technologies that you saw here, you can contact me and or Alexis. We both are, Alexis from Conformic side and I'm from Cantilever side. So contact either one of us, and we can then, of course, point us to each other if you're kind of interested in how to connect model-based testing to the cloud, and then we'll help you guys out both from our own side of the technology and help you guys set it up.
Yes, you can have a trial version, so you can try directly on your system. So I think it's also a good way to really understand the technology and to really understand that this technology is suitable for you.
Yep, and also I think you guys have a free trial, and we also have a free trial, so you can go and test it out and see how it actually works for you use case. And it doesn't mean that you have to test it alone. If you want some of our experts to help you guys evaluate it, you want to ask questions, we have we have good support on that. We can help you out getting started with Cantilever, and together with Alexis, we can help you get started with Conformic plus Cantilever in there. Okay. I think if you don't have any questions in here, I think we can also be saying thank you to you guys who joined us on the stream. We can stop 5 minutes early, as now with this whole situation with COVID and everything else. For example, for me, it's always back-to-back meetings without a coffee break. So we can now give you guys a 5-minute coffee breaks to just catch up before your next meeting, which probably starts at least finish time 2 p.m. So thank you, everybody, who listened to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Henry, for the demonstration. Thank you for all the great info that you gave to the audience. And if you have any question, you can just pick up the email address and send us a mail. We are here to help you, and we are here to help you to speed up end-to-end testing in your company.
Yep. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alexis. Have a good day.
Henry. Have a great day. Bye.